Welcome to your first recorded lecture for Principles of Sociology this semester. For week one, I just wanted to provide you with a quick lecture on some important concepts as we get started in sociology. So first off, what is sociology? Sociology may technically define the scientific study of human society and human behavior, but what does that really mean? Well, it means anything dealing with people. That could be from what people eat, what they find appeasing or not very appetizing, the media that they engage with, whether that's social or on TV, music, videos, the laws that govern people's lives, and what people can do to make those laws or change those laws, the interpersonal interactions that people have, as well as the symbols and gestures and means of communication that people have and the meanings that these pieces of communication have to them. So anything dealing with people is sociological, which is something I find pretty cool about sociology. There's no one that'll take this class and won't find some way to apply it to their lives. Now, as we start to study sociology, there are a couple important concepts that I want to introduce to you that will help you in framing the way that you should begin to look at and understand the social world around you. So first of all, the sociological perspective. The sociological perspective is a term coined by sociologist Peter Berger back in 1963. And what Peter Berger meant by the sociological perspective was seeing general patterns in the behavior of particular people, or seeing the strange in the familiar. So when we look at the social world, instead of taking whatever we're experiencing for granted, start seeing it in terms of general patterns that people are doing, even though they might not be purposely or consciously collaborating with one another. Seeing what's going on is strange or odd rather than familiar and just part of everyday life. So for example, instead of just looking at ballet as something that we see dominated by women and football something dominated by men, we can start to see this gender division in sports as strange or odd and ask ourselves questions as to why does gender seem to dictate the sports that people engage in? Or, when we eat noodles or spaghetti in the United States, we tend to eat it with a fork, or some people might twist their spaghetti on top of a large spoon, or some people might eat noodles with chopsticks, and see this division in the way that people eat as interesting and odd or strange, and ask ourselves questions about what social factors or forces are at work behind why people are doing these things. Now, one way to really employ a sociological perspective is by utilizing a beginner's mind. This is a term coined by Bernard McGrain. And Bernard McGrain challenges people to step back from their familiar routines and look at their lives with new curiosity. Now, I'll let you know that this is something that's pretty difficult to do. We're so used to what happens in our lives that we don't think to question it as odd or strange or impacted by a larger social force at work. And so I want to show you a successful example, or what I might define as a successful example, in the body ritual of the Nasarema. Now, the body ritual of the Nasarema was an observation made by anthropologist Horace Minor. So I'm going to read to you from Horace Minor's findings about the Nasarema people. And I always think that it really helps to understand what he's talking about with a few visual aids. So as I read to you from his article, I'm also going to show you some pictures so you can get a better grasp or understanding of who these Nasarema people are. So Horace Minor says the Nasarema people spend a considerable portion of the day in ritual activity. The focus of this activity is the human body, the appearance and health of which loom as a dominant concern in the ethos of the people. While such a concern is certainly not unusual, its ceremonial aspects and associated philosophy are unique. The fundamental belief underlying the whole system appears to be that the human body is ugly, and that its natural tendency is to debility and disease. Incarcerated in such a body, man's only hope is to avert these characteristics through the use of the powerful influences of ritual and ceremony. Every household has one or more shrines devoted to this purpose. The more powerful individuals in society have several shrines in their houses, and in fact, the opulence of a house is often referred to in terms of the number of such ritual centers it possesses. Most houses are of wattle and daub construction, but the shrine rooms of the more wealthy are walled with stone. Poorer families imitate the rich by applying pottery plaques to their shrine walls. While each family has at least one such shrine, the rituals associated with it are not family ceremonies, but are private and secret. The rites are normally only discussed with children, and then only during the period when they are being initiated into these mysteries. I was able, however, to establish sufficient rapport with the natives to examine these shrines and have these rituals described to me. The focal point of the shrine is a box or chest which is built into the wall. In this chest are kept the many charms and magical potions, without which no native believes he could live. These preparations are secured from a variety of specialized practitioners. The most powerful of these are the medicine men, whose assistance must be rewarded with substantial gifts. However, the medicine men do not provide the curative potions for their clients, but decide what they will be and then write them down in an ancient and secret language. The writing is understood only by the medicine man and by the herbalist who, for another gift, provide the required charm. Beneath the charm box is a small font. Each day, every member of the family in succession enters the shrine room, bows their head before the charm box, mingles different sorts of holy water in the font, and proceeds with a brief rite of ablution. The holy waters are secured from the water temple of the community, where the priests conduct elaborate ceremonies to make the liquid ritually pure. In the hierarchy of magical practitioners, and below the medicine men in prestige, are a specialist whose designation is best translated holy mouth men. The Nasarema have an almost pathological horror of and fascination with the mouth, the condition of which is believed to have a supernatural influence in all social relationships. Were it not for the rituals of the mouth, they believed that their gums would bleed, their jaws shrink, their friends desert them, and their lovers reject them. They also believe that a strong relationship exists between oral and moral characteristics. For example, there is a ritual of ablution of the mouth for children, which is supposed to improve their moral fiber. The daily body ritual performed by everyone includes a mouth rite. Despite the fact that these people are so punctilious about the care of the mouth, this rite involves a practice which strikes the uninitiated stranger as revolting. It was reported to me that the ritual consists of inserting a small bundle of hog hairs into the mouth, along with certain magical powders, and then moving the bundle in a highly formalized series of gestures. Now, did anyone perform this ritual just this morning? And as you were brushing your teeth, did you think to yourself, I'm performing a ritual ceremony. I'm mixing magical potions and powders in my mouth. Probably not. But if you notice the spelling of the Nasarema, it spells American backwards. So we are the Nasarema people, even though we don't necessarily tend to look at our bathrooms as shrines or performing ceremony and ritual activities when we're just performing our daily bathroom rituals. So I like this example because it shows us how we can employ the sociological perspective by utilizing the beginner's mind, stepping back from our familiar routines and looking at our lives with a new curiosity. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the sociological imagination. Your book introduces this term, coined by sociologist C. Wright Mills, defined as the intersection between biography and history, looking at how people's lives are set in a larger social context. Mills was really interested in how who we are as individuals is influenced by the larger social world that we're surrounded by. And one way we can start thinking in this way is about our name. Why were you given your name? Now, sure, your parents might have really liked the name that you were given, or maybe you've chosen your own name and you really like it as well. But if you think hard enough, you might be able to think about some larger forces or larger factors at work influencing why you were given your name. That had nothing to do with you. Isn't that kind of interesting? that something so unique to us that someone just says the first syllable of our name and our head turns really has nothing to do with us. Now, as you think about what might have influenced your name, you might have come across or thought about the time period in which you were born. If you were born 500 years ago, is it likely that you would have the name you have? The place that you were born? Were you born inside the United States, outside of the United States? Did this influence what your name was? The ethnic group that you were born into? The family that you were born into? Your gender? Are there anything else that you can think of? Maybe religion, language, celebrities. All of these things can influence a person's name. And they're beyond individual personal preferences, but really larger social forces and factors at work influence our names. Another thing that C. Wright Mills saw as really important about the sociological imagination is the ability to utilize the sociological imagination to make change. C. Wright Mills thought it was really important that we look beyond the individual to see society's influence. Now, as your book cautions, we need to be careful not to be too deterministic about society's influence on people, taking away the agency that people absolutely have and the influence people have on society. We'll talk about this more as we get into chapters 3 and 4. But C. Wright Mills thought that the sociological imagination allowed us to turn what he called personal troubles, things influencing particularly individuals, into public issues, things influencing groups of individuals, to make change. Right? And C. Wright Mills was concerned about improving the social world. We'll read about more people concerned about that next week. So a personal trouble might be something influencing an individual, like a student fails a test. And if we're going to look at the cause of that personal trouble, we would look at it being rooted within the individual. They didn't study hard enough. They didn't go to class. They didn't take good notes. They didn't read their textbook, right? So the solution has to be personal. Well, if we fix this person, then we're going to fix their problem. But C. Wright Mills thought that a lot of things influencing people today didn't just influence specific individuals, but rather groups of individuals. And therefore, there were larger social forces or factors at work causing the problem. So C. Wright Mills encourages people to look at issues as public issues. Instead of looking at a student failing a test, look at all the students that are failing tests and look at how the cause might be beyond the individual and societally rooted or societally influenced. Maybe it has to do with access to food to fully fuel the students' bodies and brains. Maybe it has to do with safety. Maybe it has to do with resources within the education system or competencies of the teachers. Maybe it has to do with the way that tests are written and the way that students are assessed. And if we look at that cause as being beyond the individual, then the solution must also be set in society as well. It must be within society's social structures. Now, one reason we might do this is we can solve a lot more problems by looking at the solution within society than looking at the solution within an individual. For example, if somebody's unemployed, solving the problem might mean getting them a job. But if the unemployment rate is 50%, getting one person a job is not going to solve that problem of unemployment. Thereby, creating a solution within society is going to have a much larger and lasting impact on solving the problems of society than just finding an individual a job. So I've introduced to you the sociological perspective and the sociological imagination, and we'll just build on our understanding of the social world utilizing these two sociological concepts throughout the rest of the semester. Now I want you to answer a reflection journal where you employ these concepts to understand how the social world has influenced you and why you're here at Piedmont Virginia Community College.